Hello everyone, today I'm in Montreal with a friend and fellow top retail expert. In 2020, Carl Boutet wrote The Great Acceleration entirely by hand. By 2024, he was polishing Blind Spot with AI. This year, The Flip was co-piloted by AI at every step. 3 books, 3 stages of the same shift he's been warning us about. The moment technology stops amplifying human thinking and starts replacing it so quietly that we don't even notice. The Flip is a manifesto for getting that back. Here's Paula Macaggi, and this is another episode of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. Carl, thank you so much for having me in Montreal again.
Bienvenue à Montréal, Paula.
Welcome to OFFBounds. It's been 2 years you came to the show for the first time?
Yeah, with Charles when we talked about the school mainly.
Yeah, today we're talking about not 1 but 3 books. Let's talk a little bit about this first one. What was it about and when did you write it?
It's called The Great Acceleration. You have the French copy there that I wrote just basically coming into the pandemic and then published it in 2022. It was really about digital transformation and being accelerated through the pandemic. I sort of coined the term in the spring of 2020, the launch of a friend's book, Steve Dennis, when he launched his book. I sort of tossed the word out there and it caught on because we were feeling this acceleration in a lot of ways. They got pulled back, obviously, but the idea was sort of a portal into the future, if you will, of how digital transformation, how far and how fast it could go. It was artificial. It was the pandemic. But yeah, there was a lot of lessons in there that we picked up on. And that book was mainly around interviews that I was doing around trying to validate some of the dynamics that were happening in the market at that time.
And we didn't have AI back then.
No, I wrote that one pretty much by myself with some help with some editor, but no AI. It was 100% written by humans. Maybe some spell check, I guess, but that's pretty much it.
And then your second book was Blind Spot.
Right.
I remember when we were launching it. I have this copy at home too. When did you write it?
So that one was written. It was basically instigated in the winter of 2022. I was in Vietnam teaching, and the week that ChatGPT launched, and having done Great Acceleration, having thought I was really keeping on top of technological accelerations that were happening across the board. This one caught me off guard. So it was kind of a blind spot, if you will. The ideas were, how do we avoid being caught off guard by technology? How do we best prepare? How do we keep our options open and exploring and curiosity to make sure that we're not over-investing in any one technology, but we're not getting caught off guard by any of them either. So that's what Blind Spot was mainly about.
And we already had a few of the LLMs available in their early start, right?
Yeah.
How much AI was part of this book?
So that one was just more around it was polishing. It was sort of the idea. So making sure that the wording was coherent, that it was just sort of elevating the quality of the text more than spell check would. So it was just kind of bouncing ideas to a certain extent, but this was like early LLM. So it was not really in full co-pilot mode like the third book, where you started losing a bit, of what is my idea and what is the LLM's idea. This was pretty much all my ideas just being polished by the LLMs.
Okay, I think that's the breaking news that we have now. There's a new book.
Yes.
That is called The Flip.
Exactly.
And it's not published yet. I don't have a copy. I was one of the first ones to
You were
have
the first
access
person outside of me and the 2 people helping me put it together to see it. So yeah, your feedback is very important.
And it touches very interesting aspects of the moment we're living now. And I don't know how long it's going to take for the 4th book because it just keeps accelerating, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it does feel like a trilogy. Like I think this is kind of, whatever that next series, and already this one is getting away from sort of the purely technological. And one of the big things as well is it's more about the questions and the answers. The first 2 books had a lot of answers, or pretended to have answers. This one is more about the questions. And so what are the things that we should be looking out for? What are the questions that we should be asking? And more human, which is sort of the subtitle of the book too, is how do you remain more human?
And but that's my next question. How human and AI, what was the mix of human and AI writing this book?
I wish I could tell you. That's kind of part of the flip, right? Is the idea that where the value creation occurs, the algorithm plays more and more of a role. So is it there's no clean delineation. Like now I went back and wrote through the whole book. It's like, yeah, it's my ideas. It's me bringing to some of the concepts to the forefront, especially like the frameworks, but the writing of it and the way that those ideas were expressed, very much under the influence of the LLMs, right? So, yes, my idea, we talk a lot about augmentation, co-pilots, these sort of things. So, is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? On which side is it 60-40? Like, I can tell you that the words themselves probably are more the LLM's words than my words.
It's kind of becoming hard to define the line, right? Like for all of us.
And like any book project, you're just constantly reiterating. I mean, each one of these books were like 18 to 24 months of just back and forth, right? This one was maybe a little quicker because I really started getting into it, I would say, last summer. So 9 months, maybe now, 10 months, whereas the other ones could be like 18. Questioning and validating, especially when you're talking about emerging technologies, things are moving so quickly that you look back at stuff. And that's one of the reasons I self-publish these books. If I had to go through the traditional publishing channels,
they'd be obsolete by the time you publish.
By the time it comes. A Great Acceleration, I have a chapter of the Great Acceleration that ended up in a University of Toronto book called Precision Retailing. I mean, that was almost 24 months, and the data points from the Great Acceleration, especially the ones that focused on e-commerce and these sort of things, were dated, quite honestly. And I don't know how relevant they still were 24, 36 months later. Sure, the frameworks are there. But anyways, all to say that, the speed and we thought the Great Acceleration was the fastest of the accelerations, while we're realizing now that those were sort of the slow times now in comparison.
For sure. I remember when we were talking about like, oh my God, it never has been so fast. And wow, you would never be that slow again.
Well, we did pull some things 10 years into the future. Let's be real, we especially around e-commerce. But now the speed of technological adoption and how quickly we're like, I'll call it embracing, might be a bit of a strong term, but at least we're exploring these new technologies in all the organizations, from the smallest to the largest, is really fascinating. So yes, that acceleration keeps getting faster and faster as the models become faster and faster too. It used to take 6 months for a new model to appear. Now it feels like, 6 weeks. We're like, when's the new model coming out?
Yeah, that's true. But let's dive into the flip then.
Yes.
While nobody has access to it yet, let's discover what you wrote. You mentioned something about the 4 forces reshaping commerce.
Yeah.
Why 4? What are they?
Actually, originally it was 3, and I kind of split one into 2. It's just through this technology, we're feeling all these forces, and I maybe should backtrack just a little quickly, sort of why the flip as well too, and then we'll talk about the forces. Is I've been feeling, I'll use another French word, malaise and discomfort from business leaders over, especially the last 2 years, where they're like, the ground is shifting, something is happening. I'm not so sure what it is. There's a discomfort that's being provoked, and it's the idea. I think what kind of came to me was this flip idea where the value creation is sort of is turning right now and flipping, where technology up till 2022, 2023 was sort of an amplifier. It was sort of the human value proposition was at the core. And then we were using technology to augment that value proposition, the way we broadcast, for instance, the information like we're doing right now, or the way that we were sort of massaging it, or you're using spreadsheets and business intelligence tools to kind of validate that we were on the right track. Mainly LLMs brought this, but there's also all sorts of other AI-driven technologies that are sort of taking over more and more the value chain from where we get our supply to how we deliver the last mile to everything in between. We sort of lose a bit, like my book writing experience, what's creating value where, because we have these 4 forces that are playing into it. So the 4 forces are, I think the first one everybody's pretty clear on, automation, right? We're automating more and more of the processes. The algorithms sort of point us in a direction that gets us from point A to point B the fastest. So that's happening again from supply all the way to delivery and loyalty and everything all around. So it's being automated. While it's being automated, it's also being optimized. So, yes, from point A to point B, but with the least amount of friction, the least amount of energy, which is maybe not true, but because we're using energy in different ways. But so we're just trying to get us there as fast and as efficiently as possible. That's the optimization, the efficiency part. Now, when we start to go and try to keep the customer engaged along the road, well, we have 2 other forces. So we have one that's called contextualization. So the algorithms are more and more trying to recognize, some you could call it personalization to a certain extent. We're trying to recognize what it is that we want and how we want it and when we want it. and serve us in that way. The algorithms are sort of stepping in more and more, especially in agentic. We're seeing this, so we can get into more on the agentic side of this. But we're seeing this new sort of a phenomenon where everything is being optimized just for us. So personalization at one. We've had personas for a long time where we were personalizing to customer groups. Now
segments,
now we can personalize to Paula, right? And that's the promise anyway. So we're not entirely there yet, but we can see that happening. And the last one is something I talked about in Blind Spot as well, is immersion. So the idea is, as we're contextualizing, we have this data layer that keeps thickening around us, all these tools that serve us information, and it can be, smart glasses is maybe not a good example because they haven't really caught on. The form factor is still an issue, but we can get more and more contextual information through our smart glasses. But obviously, we're getting more and more of it through our phones, maybe through our audio on our ear pods, through haptics. They're going to start happening. I'm wearing a Fitbit and it might be giving me some vibration.
Yeah, I'm here wearing my wearables.
So, it's giving us, so we're being contextualized more and more. So those are the four forces: automation, optimization, immersion, and contextualization.
And which one would you pick as the blindest spot?
Really depends on the organization. I think everybody's really focusing on optimization and automation because the cost efficiencies are clear there. The organizations can measure the ROI a lot more directly. And so maybe most organizations are less blind because they're making investments in that area more directly. Maybe the ones that they're less familiar with is the immersion and contextualization, other than like the loyalty schemes and the personalization that's happening there. But maybe the algorithms are doing it without them knowing. When I'm going into the LLM and having it guide my purchase decisions, maybe that's sort of not always super exposed to the organizations that are, don't have direct control over how that happens.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like almost like, are we being coerced, or are we having our own choices? That's the problem.
And how do we influence those choices in a world where everything's happening sort of in a black box? So how do I know that the influences that I want my consumer to those nudges that we want the customer to follow along, to come and land on our product or service, are bringing in the right direction? How do we control that? And tools that hallucinate and that aren't perfect either. So that's where the complexity comes in, and where people are, I think, are a bit concerned around this whole agentic wave, and how do we make sure that we harness the power of these algorithms to guide the consumers in the direction that we hope they come to us on.
And I'm happy you talked about algorithms, because I think the way we search has been kind of standardized with the SEO for the last 20 years. I think it's been a while. Yeah.
Since Google's been around.
Yeah. But now we are seeing a different trend, right? Like, instead of me going on Google and looking for one keyword, I'm actually having a conversation with an LLM, trying to define the products I want.
Exactly.
Is this what we call AEO or GEO? Depends on how people call. What's your view on that?
Yeah. So we know there's a lot more touch points. SEO was, there's a whole industry built around optimizing for search engines. The rules of engagement were clear. They were never perfectly defined by design. I think let's not think that SEO was ever a perfect game either. And but the AGO or GEO or whatever you want to call it, the one that sort of deals with these large language models, especially, where we're trying to gain that same influence as we have with search engines, that's the black box. And the idea that we're not sure, you hear the founder of Perplexity being questioned, saying, how does a brand stand out? What are the key factors that you're looking for? Even the CEO is like, I don't know. Like, it's deep learning. It's finding through lines, trends.
It's its own thing.
It's obviously going a lot broader, which is interesting. I think that's why we trust it more. And we feel like we're getting richer responses from them, than why we use them maybe more than the traditional search. And let's say even traditional searches go kind of merging into an LLM, because if you're using Google, for instance, now most of the time people are going into AI mode, because you can have that sort of richer conversation, more contextualized, maybe more immersive, because it could be you could be uploading pictures into it. You can be giving it a lot more information in context. So that's, I think, the piece now, how are brands thinking about it right now while they're trying to influence at deeper levels. They're trying to go into Reddit threads, for instance, and put information into those that they hope the LLMs will pick up and guide them towards. So that's sort of one of the playbooks right now, is like, okay, you can hire an agency or you can hire bots that will go in and try to influence, which creates some secondary effects. So we could be concerned about. But the idea is it's one way more transparent because it's getting a lot more data sources and that are not the ones that are as easily influenced as the SEO ones. But it's fascinating. It's part of the flip. It's part of what's happening, how where value is being created once again, where that value chain is in SEO versus AGO, which, the jury's still out. And anybody that tells you that they've got it figured out, I would question quite heavily because there's no playbook for this.
Yeah, I interview a lot of CDOs and people that work with it. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Everybody's learning together. At this point, there's nothing to be figured out. But yeah, the Reddit thing is interesting. And as a consumer, I love Reddit. And I really hope the bots don't mess with the feedback there, because I feel like it's genuine and comes from people that they're different than reviews that you can pay on Amazon, Yeah,
absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see if there's going to be counter pushes to this too. So first of all, the platforms, all of them, even ever since e-commerce, we've been trying to have real humans put in real comments, right? And like we didn't want the Amazon, for instance, tries to make sure that they verify the people that are putting in the comments on products. It's not just some bot going in and saying, this is an amazing product, you should buy it. So I think all the platforms...
I've heard there are ways that you can pay and good comments are going to show first,
There's always ways. There's always ways that people can try to figure this out. But then the platforms, to remain relevant, have to push back and find ways to clear that fraudulent behavior, basically. So that's always going to be a tug of war, and the agents are pushing on both sides of that. The technology, the algorithms are fighting each other, bot to bot, on that way of trying to maintain that authenticity, right? And so it's a battle that's just going to get more and more heated, which then maybe the pushback might be, I might just be more inclined to find people on other platforms that are just talking real, and I can get their influence and not have to always rely on the algorithm.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that is the executive cognitive drift.
Mm-hmm. It's an extension of this. So it's the idea, we've been focusing a lot in this conversation on consumers and the way they use the tools to make decisions for them or guide their decisions. We're seeing this at the leadership level as well too, because we're relying more and more on the algorithms to provide feedback around the strategies the businesses use, the target markets that they're going after, the geographies they might be entering. They're using these LLMs and other tools to help sort of guide them. And this drift is basically the idea is like, let's enter Brazil. It's a great market for our product. Look at the size and all this. And basically that information probably came to us through some sort of analysis through an algorithm. And we're sort of giving it more and more weight and saying, well, hey, Brazil sounds
that's
great.
Exactly the answer that I wanted.
Yeah, because it feels like all the points that they're bringing us, the demographics, they were like, oh, this looks amazing. But we haven't really put it through our own filters because we're letting the algorithmic filters sort of make the decision for us. So the drift that happens there is the idea that we maybe give too much agency, which is a funny word to use when we're talking about agentic. And more we're giving so much agency to the tools without making sure that we have the human input. And the real danger of the drift is to see a sameness, is the idea we're all using the same data, we're all coming to the same conclusions. So all the same brands are entering Brazil all of a sudden for the same reasons and using the same campaigns, because maybe that's another part of the algorithm saying, well, if you're going into Brazil and you're going to be selling some sort of beverage in Brazil, well, you got to use the same soccer people, you got to use the same sort of backdrops. We got to and next thing you know, all the beverages start looking the same.
Yeah, like it's basically, we all have the same information. We are relying too much on these LLMs because they sound super smart.
Exactly.
And they analyze the data. Like, why would I care, right? But we're not asking the questions that we used to ask for every person that will come with an idea if it was good to bring beverages to Brazil or not.
Or how about just call up, a contact in Brazil and have some people in Brazil to talk to, instead of letting them and saying, okay, well, I have this idea they're being a beverage, and what do you think? Like, I'm going to use the soccer player, and they're like, well, no, that soccer player's reputation is not the greatest right now. Something happened, last week, and you might probably want to think of somebody else, which the LLM maybe didn't pick up on. And obviously, beverage companies are going to be smarter and they're going to validate some of this stuff. But I'm just saying that I think there's this natural tendency right now. The tools, to your point, are so powerful, and there's also so much pressure on the executive to deliver more and more productivity, do more with less and less.
We see
headcounts being cut. So you're supposed to be able to, while it's automating your emails, while it's automating your spreadsheets, while it's automating all your dashboards that you have, and it's giving you recommendations on, well, here's a signal, this is what you should do. Well, we sort of let the algorithm take over more and more. And at one point you're like, wow, that decision Was that really my decision, or was that the algorithm's decision to take this path? And that's sort of that's why I said I don't have the answer. I just have making sure people raise the question and sort of bring it back and have that, you make sure the human is in the loop.
Absolutely. And you work as an advisor for several companies. Do you have a sign that the person has this cognitive drift?
Yeah. Well, I think it's when you start asking the questions, right? And you realize that the answers are just always coming off the spreadsheet
let me find it. Yeah.
Well, let me find it's fine. I mean, that's always been there, but it's more the question. Yeah. Maybe they don't intrinsically know why they're doing it. They're just saying, well, if the data sort of just pointed us in that direction, the dashboard was telling me this was the right thing to do, and I did it. So maybe just, that second and third question beyond just why are we doing it? Executives are usually smart people. They'll understand, and there's usually some instinct. They'll jump in at some point. But this is more like a warning because we're starting to see it happen. Yeah. And when they start coming up with sales projections or marketing campaigns that, you're like, there's some flags in there that things that don't necessarily, that's where the intuition will come in. And that's where the drift can start happening, where you got to make sure that intuition stays on top and doesn't get taken over by the algorithm.
And it's funny because you also mentioned artificial delight is detectable, which is, I think, is the perfect segue for what we're talking about.
Exactly.
What is this artificial delight?
You can almost feel it, right? You almost feel it when it's almost too manicured, too perfect. It doesn't feel, it loses its authenticity, right? You pick up on that, it's like, wow, this is almost too good to be true. And it's so optimized, it's so contextual, it's so that it almost loses a bit of the organic, grainy sort of nature that made whatever special. It's like, it comes at you, it's almost too polished, right? I believe we're going to see sort of a pushback, and we're already seeing it in some cases where more analog, more sort of human first, more like, it's not perfect, but it feels human at least coming back into play.
I started to become more grateful of mistakes and, I don't know, punctuation that is not right. Things that I do all the time. It feels more authentic. I was like, oh, thank goodness it was someone who wrote it. It wasn't an automated message.
Maybe we can let the listeners in a little background. But for the questions for this, because you were traveling in, you asked me, could you print them? I was like, you want these? I could put them on an iPad for you. He's like, no, I prefer to have them on paper. Like I want to feel something. I
have here my notes.
Yeah, you're like, we could have done that on a screen, but no, you want to have that tactile experience, and we're going to see that more and more, and we're already seeing it in the way we're seeing.
I'm not reading my Kindle anymore because I know that it's calculating how fast I read. It's taking notes on what I'm taking notes. Like, no, I want to have a physical book.
Interesting.
Read through it.
You don't want Big Brother Kindle judging you on what your reading materials are. I could appreciate that. And we're seeing it in all sorts of, manifestations, even Generation Alpha, especially coming up now. We keep talking about millennials and Gen Z, and the mall isn't dead, and people want to be in places and want to socialize. And, the return of, we have this great thing here in Montreal called Croissant, where the people get together for these coffee raves, basically, right? And they just want to be together at daytime. Like, I'm tired of being on my laptop in my coffee spot. Can we pull people together and create a bit of energy around this? So there's a lot of these kind of experiments that are happening. Are they very good at using digital? 100%. They're attracting the crowds through digital, but then they get the people in very analog environments that come together and celebrate, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I have a few friends. They have teenagers as kids, and the teenagers are like, "Oh, why do you use AI? You're so lazy." I was like, "Oh my god, thank goodness! Like, I hope this is the next generation."
Yeah, but then they turn around and submit all their homework on AI. So let's see. We got to see. And this technology is, the old saying, the genie's not going back in the bottle. This technology is here to stay.
Once you see how much easier you can do things, it's just going to stay.
And so how you pivot, where do you create value? And that's part of the flip too. So how do you think about, okay, so if we're optimizing and augmenting and doing all these other things at the same time, where does the value creation come from? What is that sort of human touch that can create that? So we're back to the idea of the human sort of augmenting the value versus the opposite, which the flip was.
I think we're all asking the same questions, right? What am I here for the world? What is my unique skills that I cannot do?
Well, yeah, not do yet. So we always have to sort of keep evolving and pushing forward and finding those things that differentiate us and give us that. And the other thing we got to be careful is there's no universal truth. That's often the, like, oh, this is the way people are going to shop, or this is the way people are going to consume media, or this is the way people are going to want to socialize. Some people, like, there's groups of people in certain environments for certain types of applications that, there are categories of products I'm convinced that you really want to invest time in and spend and touch and feel that if I can get in and out in 5 seconds, I'll be very happy with, and vice versa. So I think we need to be careful not to overgeneralize any of this, but I just want people with the flip to really maybe put their finger on what is this discomfort we're feeling, like where the value creation is sort of changing, and how do I not necessarily push back? There is a bit of pushing back happening, but at the same time, how do I really sort of take this to my advantage? How do I even relate and understand what's going on so that I can maybe make more thoughtful decisions? And I'm totally fine letting the algorithm run the show on this, but maybe on this other part, I really want to take back the control and make sure that I'm the one that's, dictating how, where, and why, the customer is meeting me.
So back in the day when you wrote this book, I remember we were talking a lot about self-checkout.
Yes.
It was when AI was computer vision. We were crazy about computer vision on how we wouldn't need cashiers anymore in stores and etc. 6 years later, there's a pullback.
Yeah.
Right? Why do you think this is happening?
Well, so there's a couple of things happening. And when I wrote that, don't forget, this was in the context of the pandemic. It was also very much tied to the lab at McGill that I've, been very involved with. And we were the first in Canada to have a fully automated retail checkout experience. It was like an Amazon Go sort of experience. And we've seen the pullback. Amazon Go, obviously, the technology and their fresh and their large format. There's been some pull back there. We've seen some more traditional self-checkout concepts sort of scale back as well, especially for the larger chains. They didn't completely remove them. They just sort of downsized them and then realized, okay, customers want a choice. And one of my favorite stories is actually Jumbo out in the Netherlands that has slow lanes, because some people want to talk to a cashier and enjoy, and that's their social contact of the day, right? But they still have 5 self-checkout lanes where people say like they feel that's going to be faster. That's what's going to use. And then on the side, they have e-commerce checkout as well too, or click and collect. So back to my ideas, there's no universal truth. Yeah. You want to give people that optionality. So the pullback is more the idea is like, no, we're not going to remove all the tills. We want to have a couple of tills still with humans there, treating and giving people that experience if that's what they want.
I think not all the time we need to be efficient and quick. Sometimes you want to do the slow part of talking to a
some people in some circumstances prefer that, and some people, listen, I got to get home. I got kids that are waiting for me that I just got to get in and out. Versus the senior person who's maybe that's what Jumbo would realize, and the government of the Netherlands talked about this crisis of loneliness. I said maybe stores have a role to play in trying to counter this crisis. It's a mental health issue. So, I think that's the idea, is we got to come back and look at the full spectrum, understand that yes, when it's self-checkout, we want it to be faster and faster. I still believe in computer vision, by the way. I think there's a Moore's Law thing happening here where the cost and, the return on investment hasn't played out for most of them.
Yeah, they're doing a lot for
airport is still happening. Stadiums are happening, places that are very time sensitive. So the technology, the ROI is easier to convince.
Like they're also seeing what products are kept.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So there's a lot of data, and we're not getting away from data either. We want more and more of it, especially in physical environments. We have a lot of it in our digital. How do we find it in our physical? So you'll see that technology is going to come back stronger than ever, but it's not going to remove the jumbo line till where I want to have the slow lane and have that, have that 2-minute conversation with the cashier who remembers my name and wants to ask me how my day's going.
Absolutely. I like both.
Exactly.
Just to say, it all depends on the circumstances. We 100%. All shop differently depending on the day and the time.
And as retailers, we know that now. We can't treat every customer the same. Back to the personalization at the very beginning, And if I want to stay relevant as a retailer, I have to give those options. You can have a strategy where you're going all in and you're still 100% online only and whatever. Fine, you're going to capture a part of the market. But for most retailers that want to sort of play in this unified, omni-channel, whatever, harmonized retail world, you recognize you got to kind of give different paths to different customers for different reasons. And it might be the same customer just at a different time of the year or a different time of the day or a different state of mind wants to have, live a different experience. So one day I want to get in, get my bread and my eggs and get out as quickly as possible. And the next day I want to be inspired because I'm having trouble thinking of what I want to cook for dinner. And I'm fine spending 15, 20 minutes, kind of just walking through the lanes and finding that inspiration.
Yeah. And there's something that you said that is very interesting. Designing for agency or designing for addiction.
Yeah. So the first idea of the book when I started writing it was the subtitle was delegation, not relegation. So, how do you sort of offset some of the things that you find don't create so much value, but you don't give up complete control? That's the relegation. So how do you delegate versus relegate? And this idea of agency, and I get funny because the word agentic definitely ties into this. So where is the agency? Where do I hand over control? And I'm still very skeptical around the full stack agentic idea that, we're going to let the algorithm go from discovering the product for us all the way to purchasing it for us. I think
one of my joys is actually the discovery part of walking and trying and touching, 100%. Right? Like
again, depending on the category. Maybe if you're shopping for motor
toilet
oil,
paper, I don't need the duration.
So some things you want to sort of collapse that whole sort of decision tree and get it as quickly. But then probably that last moment where you're going to say, okay, that toilet paper is the one I'm going to buy and here's my credit card. Like you maybe at some point we're talking in months, if not, maybe not years, maybe in months, you're like, you know what, I'm fine. Automate my toilet paper purchasing. I'm okay. Like at least I have to deal with that stuff in the dish soap and some, but the other stuff, no, I always going to want to be in the loop, right? So that's the idea. But agentic is most definitely going to put pressure on the traditional marketing funnel where we sort of cut down the decisions and, the attention interest decision, what I teach in my digital marketing classes still. And how do we sort of collapse that so we get from attention to action as quickly as possible? Because is it really creating a lot of value? Are those extra steps? Is that cognitive sort of drain really good for the consumer in all the cases? Maybe not. If I'm getting inspired for what to cook tonight for dinner, probably. But if it's those more mundane, low consideration purchases, I think we'll see those get automated more and more. So where's the agency play in that context?
You are not only some of the advice companies, you also teach students.
Yeah.
Then that's why I'm here, right? Like I'm going to be a guest lecturer at your school.
Absolutely.
So you teach in Montreal, Vietnam, and Bangkok, which is completely different geographies and cultures.
Yeah.
How are you seeing AI playing with these students and the projections of the future, and even like delivering a homework to class?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my students in Asia's English got a lot better very fast. And ironically, that's how I opened the blind spot, because I said I was in Vietnam the week ChatGPT launched, and I became Professor ChatGPT because I introduced them basically to this tool, and you saw their language proficiency written explode, to a point where obviously they were leveraging the tools. Now, in terms of how it's used differently, I can tell you Vietnam is very much interested in data science. They're very technological. They're very technical. The market is booming. They have one of the fastest growing economies in the world, basically leveraging technology in a lot of different ways. Bangkok is interesting because it's more international. I got students from very different sort of mostly Asian countries, so we've got a whole diversity there that I don't see in Vietnam. So a lot of different ways of using that and maybe more creative. Here in Montreal, obviously McGill, we're fortunate to have like one of the pretty top level institutions that tracks a certain level of academic students, both undergraduate and graduate, because I teach both levels here now. So a lot of diversity there too. I think they're more interested in strategic applications. They're more sort of big picture thinking. So, I'm generalizing, obviously, because there's a bit of all of that in each one of these classes. But
it's nice because we're dealing with the future.
Well, not just dealing with the future, we're dealing with students that are making a conscious decision, because they could just go to the LLM and get the education if they wanted to. The knowledge is there. How it gets delivered, the experience they have while they're getting that delivery, the people they're meeting, the human connections that they're creating. That's what I try to push. And even the way I teach has sort of changed. I've only been teaching really for 5 years now, 5-6 years. It used to be more about the answers. Now it's a lot more about the questions, like I was saying earlier. So I think that's part of why the book got written. And I injected at the last minute this chapter in the book called The Messy Middle. And I put it in the middle of the book because it's the idea that we're still working through a lot of this stuff, and that's good. And you got to make the students, whatever geography I'm in, feel more comfortable with the ambiguity, because that's one of the things, maybe the secondary effects of all this technology is they're not necessarily comfortable with ambiguity because they have all the answers from the tools. So when you start giving them sort of very broad questions, more philosophical, they get a little uneasy where you're saying, well, talk to me about a retail technology. you find really interesting and why. And they're like, well, what's retail technology? Well, you choose. Well, why don't you choose for me which technology? Like, why am I choosing? Like, you're the professor.
The freedom freaks them out.
The freedom sometimes is like a little destabilized. I used to see that more in Asia than here, but now I'm seeing it a little bit across the board now, where they're like, well, tell me what exactly it is you want me to study, and I'll give you like really deep and thoughtful answer on what you want. No, that's the part of the messy middle, is I want you to sort of go out and discover and find a technology or a business model.
That's a great point.
Or something that you find interesting. Why do you find it interesting? And yes, apply the course frameworks, use the theory that we're talking about in the class and the guest speakers like yourself and the ideas that you're bringing so that you can integrate that. But I want you to sort of instigate. I'm not going to give you on a platter, here's exactly what I need you to talk about.
I think there's just this pressure of being right, because technically there's a right answer, because now the LLM is giving one answer, it's not giving a reflection.
These are very talented students. Academically, they're very proficient. So they've been trained for that. And I'm trying to break a bit of that training with the messy middle. The idea that like maybe that's where the value is going to come from you finding that, because connecting the dots, the technology, the algorithms is be hard to beat. But maybe there's a dot that's not on the plot that you're going to discover that's not part of the regular set. And that's where you're going to create value.
We are all living through that. But my audience is specifically retail leaders.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to them heading into the week?
Well, I think it's interesting that, this idea of drift, right? And what they want to reclaim, because they're under a lot of pressure to optimize, or under pressure to, deliver a strong bottom line quarter after quarter or year after year. So it's normal that they're trying to adopt the tools that are going to give them that direct, short ROI. But at what cost? And again, I'm not here about answers. I'm here more about questions, right? So what cost is that? What are they losing? What are maybe the opportunities they're missing out on because the algorithm is pointing them in a very specific direction? So sometimes maybe take back a bit of that efficiency, maybe look back and say, maybe there's something broader, a bigger opportunity, because, if I'm being guided in this direction, what's telling me my competitors aren't going in the very same direction? We're all going to look the same.
Yeah, that's a big risk, especially when it comes to marketing, when you see campaigns looking exactly the same.
100%. That's the top level. That's the stuff we see. That's the one that you
can see automatically.
That's the stuff we see. But think about everything that's happening on the back end, on the supply chain, on the logistics, on how we choose what products we're going to sell and where we're going to sell them before we even show you that marketing that all looks the same.
Yeah, great. I'm even more anxious now. I'm joking.
Now, this is an opportunity to do exactly what we're doing, and you're a perfect example of this, Paula. You make the effort. We could have done this on Zoom. This podcast or this media has always made the effort of being in person. And I salute you for doing that. And you make great sacrifice, because literally, I know your travel schedule. I know a bit about what goes on to make you show up here in Montreal and do this. I mean, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that, but that's what creates, why OFFBounds is unique in the way it does it. So, as we say in French, chapeau.
I think, merci. But I think the point of having conversations in person and looking at each other's eyes is exactly the connection that we can't have otherwise. And that's why physical retail is becoming even more special now, and people are looking more into people, even though they have all these optimizations in their hands. Thank you so much. I am looking forward where people can buy your book.
It's always the same. I don't publish through regular channels. It'd be sort of ironic of me say, stay away from the algorithms and then go buy my book on Amazon. So studiorx.world, still my website, and still the place where people can find me, or just on LinkedIn. Usually the books, the physical books that you have are for my clients and my speaking engagements. Those are reserved for that. The digital copies you can download from my website.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put the links here in the show notes for our audience. And thank you. Let's go to McGill now.
Let's go.